getting ready to have its 13th anniversary. So,
nice.
I'm one of the older men in still writing about toys and that sort of thing. But this year has also been sort of significant for me because I also got a job at Gentle Giant, doing as their marketing manager. So for the first time here, I'm not just on the outside, I am on the inside as well, which is kind of unique for me and very exciting. I'm really loving being there, and you know, one of the reasons I started AFI is because I was always kind of fascinated by how the sausage gets made, like why decisions happen, why things don't happen, why things get canceled, why it ended up like this, and now I'm on the front lines of that every day. So that long fascination has not died off in me. So now seeing it firsthand is even more fascinating. So I've been doing these sorts of panels. I'd like to change it up a little bit, change up the people, change up the topics. I think I've been doing it a little over 13 years. I think about 15 years.
Yeah, I think it's longer too.
Yeah, I think you were on one of my very first ones.
I think I've been on almost every one.
You might have. Which is great, and you know we'll have Jerry tell his story later because Jerry's been you know he's had his own companies more than once. He's been in the visual effects industry. Just like these guys have a love and a passion for this, which I always find fascinating because when we grew up and collected toys, we didn't know who any of these people were, and a lot of them, you know, came out of like engineering and stuff, and they didn't necessarily want to be in toys. They got a degree, and that's sort of where they found themselves, and you know, not to say they didn't like it, but this is sort of the first generation where the people that played with like Kenner action figures and Micronauts and Shogun Warriors are the people making the toys. And that, to me, I think, has really created a golden age for action figure collectors. And, you know, they really do have a tremendous passion and love of this sort of thing. And I think that is reflected in the products. And we're just getting some crazy stuff that we never would have thought we would have. I mean, even just sort of this golden age of nerd, like driving here right now, I passed a bus that was skinned with Wonder Woman, you know, and it just like, in 75 years, we have never seen like a Wonder Woman bus, and there it is. So
long time coming. It should have been.
It is a long time coming. So we're just going to kind of talk about, you know, these guys, sort of what they grew up with, what they liked, what their struggles are, and then we're going to let you guys ask some questions, because I know there's always some questions, some concerns of how things get done, why things get done, and we might even have some prizes for people that ask questions. So I'm going to start with Kevin here. Kevin, tell them who you work for, how long you've been there, some of the things you guys do.
Sure. Yeah, why not? So I'm Kevin Canary. I am the Vice President of DC Collectibles at DC Entertainment. So that is what I do. What I do is I oversee the toy and collectible group that's part of DC. So as opposed to being a licensee that is paying money from DC Comics to make some of these products, we actually are part of that group. And we are going to be celebrating, I think, 20 years next year. We've been around since 1998 as DC Director, and now called DC Collectibles. And we make statues, action figures, prop replicas, we've done some plush, some wood figures, metal things, so a whole bunch of different items, usually in a very limited quantity, high-end, just experiencing all of the DC entertainment world. So everything from, you know, Batman, Superman, Justice League, Teen Titans, all those kinds of guys. And I've been with DC 16 years, in different ways, not all with DC Direct and DC Collectibles, but through our licensing group as well, where I was working with people like Mattel and other partners like Lego.
Awesome.
Jerry.
Jerry Nicolusio. I own PCS Collectibles. I started as a sculptor in the mid-90s, I did some McFarlane, Toy Biz, pretty much every Mattel really back then. Then I started Soda Toys. We had some success. And sold that and thought I was done with this. I really did. And then I don't know, I just did it all over again.
Well, you were sort of, I mean, you were out, and then
I
you
was
were
producing
approached
a
by,
bunch of movies.
you were approached by a licensor
I
that
didn't
you
know
had
you
worked
wanted
with
me to do the whole
previously.
spiel, though.
Well, I just think that's sort of fascinating.
Yeah,
We don't have to say who it is if you don't want.
No, I can't.
Okay.
I was trying to save them.
No, this is why they're here.
So I sold Soda Toys, and I was producing some little bunch of movies. And Capcom, who owned Street Fighter, was a little unhappy with some of the product being made, and said, "Hey, why don't you, do some more Street Fighter stuff?" And I said no. I said no about 3 times over the period of almost 2 years. And finally, Sideshow called me and said, "Hey, Capcom called us and said they want you to do Street Fighter and us to distribute it." And I was like, it's like a ghost, right? It just like hovers over me. And finally, I said, "Okay, I'll do 1 or 2." And somehow 1 or 2 turned into a 30 by 30 booth full of Street Fighter now, 8 years, 7 years, 8 years later.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. It's one of those things that happens, and you don't realize it's happening until it's there. And you're like, oh, this happened. Okay, I guess I'm doing this again. Not that I don't love it. I do. It's just that there's a lot of stress that comes with it, and I thought I was done with the stress, but I'm not.
But I mean, that's sort of interesting too, that, I mean, I think every collector agrees that Soda did the sort of definitive Street Fighter line.
Well, until now.
And now...
The Storm and Bandai eclipsed us.
Think so?
They're amazing. Yeah, I mean, if I had that technology, back then,
sure,
3D models and everything, that's what I hope I would have done.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm not gonna wave the Soda flag for that line anymore. I mean, you know what? For the time, it was beautiful. People love them. People still say they're their favorites. That's awesome. I have them, but come on, it's been over 10 years, so I would hope somebody would surpass it by now.
But you find yourself in a unique position of having that license, and 10 years later,
Yeah,
sort of having to top yourself.
And I have the Street Fighter action figure license again now. We'll see what we do with it.
And I think you're sort of, I think you're very unique in that, you own the company, you manage a staff.
I'm art director and sculptor.
But yeah, you still get your hands dirty. You still go and sculpt.
Well, it's funny because I say working on spreadsheets all day is getting dirty. Sculpting and designing toys is not getting dirty. That's like a dream job, right? I mean, that's, when I spend 8 hours working on spreadsheets and schedules, it's like dessert going back into the studio and sculpting and drawing.
But now, Kevin, sort of the same thing. You've been 20 years of DC Collectibles. You always have like these, certainly flagship characters that you have to do over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
How do you guys approach that? I mean, you do have the unique ability to draw from specific artists and things like that, but there has to be discussions like, if we're going to do X again, what are we going to do that's different, right?
Well, definitely, because we, unlike some other licensees who can play by getting another license and just changing it up with what characters they do, we're going back to that same well again and again. We're very lucky. There's 80 years of history with some of these characters, and so there's a long line of versions of characters to do, different artists who have touched them. We just started our own individual Instagram account for DC Collectibles, DC_Collectibles on Instagram. And it's funny because we're doing some throwback pictures where we're going through some of our old DC Direct action figures from the very beginning all the way back to 1998. And looking at them, the first thought is what we could do now. So to your point of like, if with the technology now, with the new sculpting that we are working on, the way we could improve some of these same pieces we did 20 years ago is exciting. Sure. And that allows us every time we look at some of these characters, because there's always going to be a need for a Batman and a Superman and a Wonder Woman. And we have new fans who were not around 20 years ago buying up stuff, or didn't know where to get it at that time, and they've just discovered a comic shop and they've gone in there and seen some really cool things. So it has to be new and fresh and as good as we can make it now, because we can't rest on what we did 10 years ago, 5 years ago, because we have new fans and they expect it to keep improving. And we love the competition we get with all of our licensees. We're also doing things with our figures because it keeps us awake and pushing things to new ways.
Yeah, but I know, because that's sort of a unique thing with you guys too, is that there's another company that has sort of the master toy license for that you have to share and work with. But I know for a fact, I don't know if we can tell the story, but can we talk about like
you can spring on me.
Well, I'm just going to talk about the Adam figure for Legends of Tomorrow. Like,
oh, wait, did I tell you that? How do you know? Where do you
I know.
Where do you find these things out?
I'm an action figure insider.
I thought I took out Bill Beneke so he couldn't be here to tell the story. So we work very closely with Mattel, and Bill would be able to tell the other side of the story. I'm sure he has a different point of view too. But we meet with them on a regular basis. They come by the office. You know, they're a licensee of ours as well. So we have this really interesting relationship. It's not competitive as much as it is complementary. And so we have, every once in a while, we are doing the same kind of thing. Not exactly the same, but you know, close enough, whether it's a video game license of DC's or a TV show or a movie. And we want to make sure that we're not duplicating efforts, because there's not enough people around to do all the things we all want to do. So we were working on DC TV figures, both groups. We had started way back when the shows first started for Arrow and Flash, and we were doing some cool figures, and we loved it. And we've been expanding out from there. And then Mattel was like, okay, it's time we want to get into it. And for Legends of Tomorrow, they were doing an Adam figure, and we were planning on expanding our line and doing an Adam figure as well. And we have a war room. It's really great. It's this little small room that has like these magnetic walls where we have pictures of all the things we're working on for 2 years in advance, and it's really great. So we bring Mattel in and we're talking about all this, and they're like, oh, we were kind of thinking of doing this figure, and we were going to come out around the same time, and we do a little negotiation, and we're like, okay, we're going to move ours back. You know, we already talked that we're going to do it, but we're not going to have it on sale for another 6 or 7 more months. You guys come out first. You're going to be doing it in more mass toy stores, so it'll get to a wide audience. We'll have this maybe more detailed. It's a little more expensive, has some more bells and whistles, and that'll be for the fans who are collecting our line. So it's a compromise. It's fun to do that kind of stuff because we like each other and we get along with that kind of stuff. But it's sometimes it's stepping on toes. We want to avoid that, so we don't do it.
And there's sort of the idea that high tide raises everybody's boat. You know,
Always.
as long as the collectibles industry is healthy, then everyone gets to benefit from that.
I mean, the fact that there could be 2 specifically Adam TV figures out there at the same time is great.
Absolutely. So Jerry, after working on like 6-inch figures for so long at Soda, now you are working on like really large statues, like 1-to-1 bust. Is there a completely different approach to that sort of thing as opposed to?
There is, and it's this, maybe it's just me, it's this grass is always greener thing. When I was doing action figures, I was like, oh, I love the freedom Sideshow has to do these statues and not have to worry about articulation and all that stuff, right? And so now we're doing all these statues and we don't have to worry about articulation. And it's like, oh, they're pieces of art, they're sculptures. And I'm like, oh, man, I want to do I want to do action figures. And and so I guess now we're going to do both. And it's interesting because it adds to your Adam story. That is what we're doing right now with Bandai, with Capcom and Street Fighter, because, it's Bandai, who am I, right? So we have to, make sure that Bandai is okay with everything we're doing.
Okay.
And we're at a higher price point, so we're not stepping on Bandai's toes, and, we keep juggling. We were hoping to show stuff, and then, we find out, Bandai's a little behind, so now you can't show anything, and I'm cool, it's Bandai. And I love those figures. I love the SH figure arts. So, but yeah, so we're going to do the same thing, but manufacturing-wise, I thought statues were going to be way easier than action figures. And I've actually found it's the opposite.
Oh.
Well, because at a $4, $5, $6, $12, $1,300 price point, you're not dealing with spray masks and stuff like that. I mean, everybody's
perfect.
looking for perfection, and I kind of miss the action figure thing where, okay, we have our spray masks. Unless somebody gets sloppy and puts it on wrong, we're pretty much good.
Yeah.
So the statues, I feel, are way harder to do than the action figures.
But as an art director too, I know you are very
Picky.
Picky.
Micromanaging.
You like things a certain way.
Yeah, you know, I think we may be the only company that, you know, the owner actually art directs every single freaking thing that comes out, like everything. To like, I don't like those fingernails. Oh, it's horrible, and I feel bad for everybody who works for me because of that. It gives it a little bit of a cohesiveness.
Right.
But yeah, and that's one of the things when we do a license, I always make sure we have a little bit of freedom, because I'm not interested in following the style guide. It's just, I don't want to do it. If that's what you want, then, you know, give it to somebody else. So yeah, you know, when we did the DC Batman statue, ours, you know, it's important to me that you guys let us do a kind of Neil Adams-y version. Because that was the whole reason I wanted to do it, because that's what I grew up with. I don't care about the Dark Knight. Sorry guys. It's all about blue Neil Adams Batman. Right? So that was, you know, I was like, if we can do that, then I'm down, but if we're only doing the Dark Knight, then
How do you guys feel just sort of the state of collectibles are right now? Is it still sort of a status quo? Is it rising with you know, all these films that are coming out and TV?
I think it's definitely growing.
Okay.
I mean, just when you see the amount of people in it. And obviously, there's limited fan base for each individual thing, but I think in general, the amount of collectible things that are happening, the amount of movies and TV shows that are the more kind of niche markets are just growing. So you have, you know, crazy stuff each year, 5 to 10 major tentpole movies now that are kind of things that would have been considered, you know, a small collectible opportunity, and you have tons of people fighting over the rights to make toys, action figures, and statues of those things. So I feel like it's growing still.
Okay.
I think it's growing, for sure growing, but it's also segmenting in this. It's harder for the B and C level characters to find their groove, because you know, some people are like, well, I collect Batman, and it's like, well, after you spend $5 grand that month on everything Batman that came out, you don't really have any money to go buy anything else.
Right, I agree.
So it's you know, we all, you know, hear about other people's sales numbers and blah blah blah, and you know, I hear, you know, you're making a Darth Vader and you're banking, but you know, you're making a secondary character, and the difference is just massive. It used to be a little more level because you had a Star Wars collector. Now you've got a Darth Vader collector.
Interesting. Yeah, and that's sort of contrary, I feel like, to how we grew up collecting.
Right.
You know, we had Lobots and Rancor Keepers, and you know.
I didn't have the Rancor Keeper.
Really?
I wanted to know.
We'll go down. We'll get you one after this. He's like a sweaty, shirtless guy.
So they come to WonderCon for.
That's true.
It's a lot of comic books, I guess.
Yeah.
If you think about it that way, you know, you've got such a disparity between. There's no middle class.
So we're going to welcome Bill Beneke here from the town. So Bill, just give a little bit of an introduction, who you are, where you work, the sort of things you work on.
Okay. So Bill Beneke, I work at Mattel. I'm a design manager on our Warner Brothers business, so that means I oversee Batman, Justice League Action, Justice League Movie, Multiverse, and Teen Titans Go.
So it's going to be sort of interesting and exciting for, you know, working on the Warner Brothers stuff, because for the longest time, you know, you had like a Batman movie every, you know, 3 years, maybe every 10 years, and now, you know, they just announced, hey, we're working on a Batgirl movie, we're thinking about a Nightwing movie, we're going to do, you know, the Gotham Sirens thing.
I'm just making up stuff.
I'm not making stuff up. I've read all of this on the internet. So that's, and it's the same sort of thing, like when people have a Star Wars license. Like suddenly, oh yeah, we're going to do Star Wars every single year. So what does that do, sort of, from the perspective of planning a line? because we've certainly seen, like, I know none of you guys work for Hasbro, but their whole mentality has had to shift because of that. Like, you don't get the depth of line that you once had. You know, you kind of have these 3 cycles so that you can capture a little bit again when the DVD comes out, but then you've got to be ready and have those pages cleared, because you know the next thing is coming, and sometimes there's multiple things a year. So how does that sort of affect how you plan out your years now?
Well, I think you brought up actually a couple of really good issues that touch back to the previous question that I came in target on. So one would be, we've got such an incredible volume of movies, TV shows, etc. You can no longer capture all of it. We live in a world where Star Wars doesn't go away, and the Toys R Us's and the Targets are not adding a second story just for toys. So you have a presence that's in a Toys R Us that's 60 feet gone every year. We're not going to be able to intrude on that because that is now Star Wars marked out territory.
Yeah.
And I think because of that, because you know your space is more precious than ever, you have to make sure that things, what they call turning on a peg, it has to sell through more cleanly than ever. And that prompts you to go for the Darth Vaders and the Batmans. It prompts a safer bet because there's a lot more riding on a secondary, 3rd tier, 4th, 5th tier character blocking up the shelf. That's real estate being eked away from something that could be producing much faster. So it becomes very business oriented.
Yeah,
very fast.
You know, I mean, it's like you're fighting the bean counters. So, I mean, I am my own bean counter. So I'm fighting myself. Crazy. But you really are. I mean, you're looking at your line plan and you're like, okay, we're not really going to make any money on this. So why are we doing it? Because we love it. We have to do it. If you don't do it, you're dead inside. So you still have to do it.
But how many of those can you do in a year?
Right.
That's what changes. You know, how
Right.
many times can you do something that is for the love of it, or because it completes a set, or is something that's a priority character that maybe doesn't hit the level of a Batman, a Darth Vader, or something to that effect. So yeah, you have to make some choices now because it is such a segmented market.
It becomes a much more disciplined process. You know, there's not the safety net. There's not the, well, this is just a great looking character and it should appeal to people.
Like,
Right.
yeah, the late 90s and the early 2000s was crazy. I mean, we would joke that it was, you know, toy making was a money tree because it didn't matter what you put out. You were selling 30, 40, 50,000 units. I remember when I first started making action figures and I talked to my friends at companies and they said, well, you know, 100,000 units is sort of our, you know, if we can't do 100,000 units, we're not. Right, exactly. And you know, now, I mean, you've got to be talking A-list character to hit 100,000 units. But back then, I remember, and if you're in the audience, hope you're not, there was this figure called the Widowmaker. Anyway, it was an independent figure. This guy made it. It was just off his comic book, and he like got the money together. And I heard that he did like 60,000 or so units of this figure, and it was just a generic his action figure, and it was everywhere.
So what I've been fascinated with, and I'm just going to throw this out
Do
there,
it, good.
is how things are changing, how this industry is changing, and what I love the Four Horsemen were able to do with Kickstarter.
Oh, yeah.
So speaking of unknown characters and how do you get it out there and all, it's skipping the kind of retail level and going direct to the fans, which is sometimes the best way to do this.
Yeah, those boys are my heroes.
Oh my God, I love it. And they currently have a Kickstarter going on for, I think, the second wave of Mythic Legion.
It's wrapped up.
It's wrapped up.
980 grand.
Yeah, it's just under $1 million.
And
But
I
that,
was like, I couldn't even hit $1 million.
but that's been sort of fascinating to watch too, because they do, I think it was almost 40 characters in that line. So, you know, the all-in was $2,000 or something crazy like that. And it's been interesting to watch sort of the collector community side of it, because, you know, you drop this amount of money, you know, this excitement, watching all the reveals, and it's kind of fun, and then you have to wait a year to see what you bought.
Yes.
And it feels like there's sometimes a little bit of fatigue and disinterest over that amount of time. And when you finally get them, they're really cool, but at some point they're just like, ooh, oh yeah, I spent all that money.
It's true, and you know, our waits go up to 2 years sometimes on these statues with delays and this and that. But it's hard for me because I don't have that mentality. Like, if I am willing to buy something, I don't care. I'll get it when I get it, when they think it's right. So I have no problem waiting a year or 2 years. I order stuff all the time, and I just forget, oh, something came out. I wonder when I ordered that.
I know it's a free gift.
But not everybody's like that. And so, you know, they'll cancel or they'll become frustrated. And it's hard for me because I don't wrap my head around that.
Well, we don't sell direct to the consumer, so we have this weird piece of having to get people excited 7 or 8 months before it comes out as we're trying to take the initial orders, and then it finally shows up 7 months later, and are they still excited enough to go to the store and buy it, or have they pre-ordered it where they put their money down? And so we're trying newer things where we keep reminding people, like, hey, here it is, and it's in stores now, or it's coming soon, and don't forget about this, and this is why it's cool. And that's a lot of extra work that has to be done just because we're not selling direct to the consumer, or there's such long lead time with manufacturing, and you want to keep that hype going. That's what's fun about Kickstarter in a way, is like you have this period of time where it's like a game show,
Right.
and then they've already put the money in, so then it's the special prize comes a year later or whatever it is.
Yeah, and do you guys find it's kind of a different challenge than to grow your business going through the direct market? Because it's not like you can say, well, we'll add Walmart or something to that. Like that's got to be
Yeah, I mean,
consideration.
we have a little bit more of a challenge than some of the other people because we are going in a very niche audience, and so if that audience all of a sudden is not as interested, or, there's, especially in the United States, some really weird stuff going on with small business. The political climate and just the way people are scared about the economy keeps small business owners having to play it a little safer. And they have to, well, before that was the area you could find these obscure characters or really deep lines. They need to turn even more importantly than probably the bigger retailers. And so it gets a little trickier with what they're willing to take.
Yeah, you have much less willingness to take a chance because there's no safety net, there's much more on the line. And as everyone plays it safer, it focuses into a very fine point.
Yeah.
I did hear an NPR story, I think it was, on about people's ability to choose things. If you give somebody too much choice, they don't know what to do about it. And so there is a thing like if you give, they're more likely to buy the less they have to choose from. But there is a sadness to that for me, where it's like somebody's still choosing what you have to choose from. And hopefully somebody's really clued in to the zeitgeist to know what is the best things to choose from. But that means there's not as much for the general person to kind of go through as they used to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually, sorry, that's actually a really good point, because I just lost my train of thought before you picked it up for me. is that we come up with an offering that we think people will like, but we don't get to share it directly. I think that's the interesting thing about Kickstarter. Whoever is running a project shares it directly. It's not middle managed by someone who says, well, I know this sells, and I know this sells, and I don't like the color red, and I think blue is fantastic, and therefore I'm going to take this from you, right? Because I think we probably all see that we have this that we plan to do, and that we start working on, and then natural attrition gets to this, and then when we present it to the people who have to put money on the table to get it to everyone in the room and everyone out there, but it shrinks to this.
Yeah.
In social media, it's changed everything because everyone wants a personal connection with who's making their products. It doesn't matter how big of a company you are, they somehow want a personal connection to you. It's not just, they're not just buying that figure anymore, they're buying into you. And it's so different than when we all started.
And I think it's also been an interesting adjustment for, I think, every company. And now that I'm doing this sort of thing for a collectible company, the idea with social media that you think the loudest voices are more than how many there really are.
Right.
The angriest people, it's that sort of squeaky wheel gets the grease, but it can just be literally 3 guys
Oh, it's great.
that hate something, but by God, they will stay on it like a dog on a bone.
We released a third scale Street Fighter in Coma back in January, and one guy who, one of the very first ones that shipped, of course, arrived screwed up, right? And he just went on a social media tirade about how these, I paid $800 or whatever it was for this, and blah, blah, blah. And he posted everywhere, and we started to see cancellations, right? But then as other people got them, and they were great, then everybody starts calling us back up and say, hey, I canceled that, could I get that back? And to me, it's crazy how impulsive people are based on a drop of information. It's like it's an eyedropper of information on social media, and suddenly our whole worldview is changed because of this. It's like, that thing's a piece of crap, look at that picture. And it's crazy. It's like taking a picture of a Ferrari in an underground garage with one fluorescent light over it and saying, what a piece of crap that is, you know? And yeah, but they are. They're so few, but they're so loud. And it's, don't you think it's better to do?
Well, and that's the way the world is working right now.
That is the world now. We have to adapt to it.
Yeah, and we've been trying a lot of different ways with our social media, both through Facebook and Instagram, but also our kind of customer service email where we're trying to answer people directly. We're a small group, so we don't have a customer service team. It's like the same people who are also art directing things or doing some of the financial stuff or business are also answering the emails and putting up our pictures. So it's a lot now. It's almost like this whole extra part of work got dropped on where your setup wasn't ready for all of that.
But I think too, I'm not trying to bash the previous like DC Direct or anything, but they very much had
Jim Fletcher just walked out to you.
But they very much had a policy of not answering anything online. You could come see them at a convention; they'll talk to you all day long.
And that was a very corporate idea of we don't have people to properly do it, so don't do it at all.
Right.
But then you get a lot of really frustrated voices, and while maybe ultimately it doesn't affect your business in a big way where you can see it, it affects it at that core brand level. Like, what's your promise to your customers? And are you coming through with that or not? And if you're not going to show that you're listening to them, even if you can't do anything about what they're saying, but showing that you listen to them, you're leaving out a section of why we're doing this. Like, that's the whole point of why we're in a collectible, kind of toy world and not doing something really boring.
Well, I think one of my favorite sort of stories about that was from you is when that first animated Batman came out and people were having problems, that ankle was snapping because it was very but people were writing in about it, and you got them another one, wrote them a handwritten note from the desk and like replaced stuff like that, and like who else was doing stuff like that?
Well, and I gotta tell you, like corporately, that's probably not something they would agree to do, but we're a small enough group in a big corporation that we still behave like a little group. So yeah, maybe it's not the smartest thing in the world to do that, but we're paying attention to something, and while what we saw early on from a quality control version was fine, if the experience people are getting is not what we intended, we need to acknowledge that.
Yeah. And I don't think I'm betraying the confidence here, but we did this panel. We did this panel last year, and both Bill and Kevin, you were on it, and we hung out after the show, like for 3 hours.
Oh my God, yes, we couldn't leave. I remember that we were like,
it got dark.
Like talking, it was getting darker and darker.
Bill and I had to walk through like LA Kings fans to get to our car.
That was bad. You guys had a bad area to go to.
But you guys were talking a little bit just about the idea of innovation and trying to, sort of your own internal drive to push yourself, and how that's not always received. Like, people don't always want, something different. They want that same thing that they want, and just that sort of creative struggle that I'm sure all of you guys sort of face. That's the idea of, let's do something different, really, surprise them, and will that work, and do people want that?
Well, I think in some cases, like everything, it's a balance. You have innovation that you want to do, and you have your audience that either you think this is something they've openly asked for. That's one thing. They're asking for this. You should deliver on it. no one's asking for it, but this would make it significantly better. And it'll just roll in sort of invisibly, but it's worth doing. It takes extra time and effort, but it's worth doing. It makes it a better toy. Then there are the things that are innovative that people would resist until they saw them, and then they're pretty amazing, and they find, and you see it in some odd little places throughout the industry, where initial reviews, oh, this is terrible, I hate it. Oh wow, this is actually really great. It'd be great if you kept doing this for the next few years. It would be, we're so glad you added X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
And then there are the innovations that are just so far afield that when I talked about gatekeepers earlier, they can't get them past the gatekeeper to find out if anyone wants them.
Yeah.
Maybe there is a market.
We have something coming at San Diego Comic-Con that we're going to be talking about.
Just whisper in my ear.
No. And it's interesting because we had a little behind curtain kind of discussion about it at Toy Fair. And if we hadn't done that, we would have run into some gatekeepers who were like, I don't understand this, no. But because we were able to get it past a couple levels quickly to some people who were able to say, oh, I think that's interesting, we're able to then bring it to San Diego Comic-Con and then talk about it there and get a bigger, like one step got removed for that. But doing things that are not what people expect from you is really hard, especially in this industry right now. And that doesn't mean we want to ignore the basic things that are expected from us. We still always have to have that bread and butter type kind of thing that is us. But we are constantly pushing. And like the big thing that I always get on is the idea of diversity and diversity of character and creators behind the scenes and pushing those kinds of things. People don't know they want it until they see it. And we're finally at a time in the toy industry where people are demanding female action figures and they're demanding ethnic characters. And it took a long time to get there for retail to kind of get on board with it, but we're finally there. But we can't give up. There has to be more of that.
Yeah. It's sort of, it's the old adage, female action figures don't sell.
And villains. We used to be told all the time from somebody who's not represented on here, a company that would say they only want this main character. There's only Batman. There's none of his villains matter. No females. We don't want any of that. And that's obviously not the case.
Yeah. Now you're doing like the Bombshells line, which is all female.
Exactly. And it's we're really happy with the statue and the action figures both because it showcases a whole different innovative point of view. They weren't based on anything at the time. Now they have a comic book series and there's a whole bunch of other product. And that wouldn't have gotten done if we listened to, toy executives who said, we don't understand that, don't do that.
Yeah. So they're giving us about 15 minutes left, so I want to open it up to questions from, we already have questions, good grief. Let's go with this gentleman back here with the cast and then we'll do the
I was just curious, you touched on it earlier about this dance with your licensees. So DC Collectibles is making toys and Mattel wants it. When do you guys figure that out? Do you guys know each other or do it like months in advance, year in advance?
We're overdue for another meeting because we're waiting for Toy Fair. Yeah, so we're setting it up actually again. But we'll show, like Collectibles will show whatever we have planned. So right now that's out into the beginning of 2019. That's how far out we have, tentative plans. And we'll show all of that to Mattel. And Mattel, you guys are, where are you?
We're through fall of 18.
Yeah, so we're bound almost on the same schedule, so we just kind of share notes and we keep trying to update. We're going to try and do it more quarterly. It was like maybe twice a year before.
And then things change because we sit together and we plan it out and like we did last year, there was a character we're both doing.
We already told that story to the Adam.
Yeah,
You missed that story.
We told that one.
He made me tell it.
Okay. But we planned it out to avoid overlap and shipping schedules change and maybe we're not going to overlap on it, but we might overlap on something.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. And you come up and get this. Go ahead, sir. Your question, go ahead.
Yeah. What sort of factors go into how much articulation a figure has?
Oh.
Articulation question.
Many behind-the-scenes fights for us. I mean, we have little infographic drawings constantly that people come in, and it's not just points of articulation, but it's range of movement, and it's sometimes an aesthetic fight versus, and it comes down to sometimes individual art directors who are working on a line, what they choose to do, the whole, debate of the eye swivel, and what is the ab crunch doing, and how much neck movement can you get, and is it worth coring out the back of a head or hair to get that back, look, or is it, going to ruin the artistic look constantly? For us, it's per line, the way that the kind of battle goes, and we usually lean on the main art director who's been given permission for that line to kind of put their aesthetic forward for us.
Yeah, it's the same here. Every line, every case is different. You try to unify it across the line. And then with us, we also have to look at the cost of the articulation over the life cycle of the whole
Yeah,
line.
every piece and part is money, so the more you put in, the more range of movement, it's more money.
Yeah. But if you can standardize, you can make it work. So the idea is that you lift it in pieces to get it to be better.
You got anything, Jerry, on that? You do action figures.
They said it.
Okay, all right. Just want to make sure.
I have a question for Jerry.
Okay.
You said you're a sculptor, right? Do you play with?
dabble.
Do you play with?
He sculpts. He's being.
Do you ever play with digitally ZBrush? Yeah, excuse me. I have a brain injury, so I speak weird.
No, we use brush all the time.
Oh, okay.
I
Thank
think
you.
it's a horrible piece of software, but it's the best we have right now. So, yeah, no, for sure. For action figures, that's all we use. I mean, I do action figures in wax these days. I think I don't save. But for statue stuff, we still go live in clay and wax.
This gentleman here in blue hat.
This is kind of a little bit off topic, but I was curious what you guys collected. So maybe the first figure that you were all given, that action figure back when you were way high, maybe everybody?
Microdons?
Yeah, Jerry's got a whole arm of micronauts.
First ones that kicked it off hardcore were Superpowers Flash and Secret Wars Iron Man and Dr. Doom.
I was mostly obsessed with the three-quarter inch G.I. Joe for the most part, but I had my brothers. I know, I see, and I love.
You saw you guys.
I already mentioned that today. But yeah, Star Wars for my older brother too is what got me. Probably was my first hardcore.
And for me, Micronauts, Shogun Warriors, and DC Migos all came out pre-Star Wars, and then that wrecked me with Star Wars after that. You, sir.
Just to touch back on something you guys talked about when you first started the panel, which is this idea that now that you have film and television, you have a broader sort of spectrum to work from. Being in the entertainment industry, does the actor or the celebrity involved in that character in the show play a part in the development of the decision to make a character, not make a character? Because for example, I had a conversation with a friend who recently was in something large, and he's going to get his own action figure, right? But the legality behind getting his approval and the monetary compensation and so on and so forth. So does that actually play, is it starting to play a role in
Always
the
has.
action figure?
Well, not always,
Yeah.
but, starting with Star Wars, I think it.
Right, like does it look like the person it's playing becomes a...
Yeah, and I've had, back in the Soda days, I had some great experiences. I mean, I did the action figures for Riddick, Vin Diesel movie. Vin came by the studio. He just wanted to see what was going on.
Which is cool because like that video had surfaced of him being a pitchman at Toy Fair for like Street Sharks.
Oh my God, yes, back in those days, yeah.
To see his own action figure, that was probably pretty cool for him.
Most of them find it to be pretty cool, I found, especially nowadays. They're pretty stoked to see that they have figures.
Yeah, it's, you hear classically some reactions of, oh, I think it would be creepy to see a figure of me. And now you don't have that. It's, I'd love to see a Lego minifigure of me.
Oh my God, that's the biggest deal. They get a Lego figure, they think that's amazing.
But Jerry, you did that Conan statue.
Yeah, and I got an email from Arnold forwarded to me.
Oh wow.
Where I forget exactly what he said, but it was short, but really kind. He said, approved, no changes. This is like the best likeness I've ever seen. I'm sorry, I did it. So I was pretty happy.
Amazing. I love it.
It was 3 days of collecting there.
Yeah.
Some celebrities do want to be involved. The ones that do and you hear something positive, it's fantastic. It's like.
Yeah, Will Smith was really great about our Suicide Squad statue. He and the whole team got back to us almost immediately, which was also surprising, and they were really nice about it.
You know who was really picky, in a very polite way, was Alice Cooper. My nose is stupid. Like, I swear at 5 times my nose, and finally I was like, dude, you're wrong. No, it's not a good day.
Yeah, that's the other thing, is a lot of actors actually don't know what they look like, and they're not very good at being able to see themselves separate, and so they're not actually great at giving their own art direction about what they look like.
Sure.
Sometimes you have to like give in to some things that they are worried about how they look, but they don't know.
So does that play a factor in the industry where they go, this person doesn't really look like Will Smith? The character, the figure doesn't look like Will Smith. It loses its sale value, loses its...
Definitely we hear it sometimes where people are like, and nowadays, there's so much better likeness going on than there ever has been before that you want something to choose from. They're like, I'd rather have that.
But you know, it's also tricky because it's the science of perception. Everybody sees each other and processes a little differently. So you can have an absolutely perfect scan, but a slight caricature added to that works better than what the person really looks like.
Yes. And there's so much photoshopping, unfortunately, done with movie posters and TV shows nowadays, that the perception of what somebody thinks somebody looks like isn't actually what they look like. So you can get a 3D scan of somebody, and that's not going to do you any good.
Or the tricky thing of, it's not actually there in their physical bone structure, but we're doing it in makeup, so the physical skull should look like it, but it doesn't actually look like the person because they don't look like that.
There's also that little bit of their soul that you have to capture. And I see it, but like, we can talk about it. The reason why we right now have a year late Supergirl statue for the TV show Melissa Benoist is because she is such there's such a joy and like something special about her that does not come through a basic sculpt. And we have had to do again and again and again because you can look at the pieces and the pieces don't make that whole the right way.
It can be very tricky. It's so much easier. It's funny because, you'll hear somebody say, oh, they're doing Stallone or Schwarzenegger or somebody really big. But these guys, Al Pacino, they have such distinctive features. They're so much easier to do than what he's talking about.
Yeah.
You in the pink had your hand up.
I was going to ask, I know dealing with corporate is really difficult. I was curious about what figure you really wanted to have made that didn't come through, that didn't get approved, that maybe stuck with you.
There's a recent thing we had to unfortunately cancel because the orders weren't strong enough from retail. And we had, for our DC Icons line, this wonderful Blue Beetle and Booster Gold 2-pack that I love more than life itself. And
Go talk to your local comic shops and say you want
it was
one.
heartbreaking. We waited, and the initial orders came in, and they just maybe when it was out in the world, it would have done better at a long period of time, but initially it just wasn't strong enough. And we have it there, we have the prototype, and we sit there and we cry over it every day.
Isn't that crazy though? I mean, that something like that couldn't get enough pre-orders. I mean,
it's just retailers right now. The direct market is playing it a little safe, which I don't blame them for. It's a scary time. Maybe some point later it'll be a better time for that, but it makes me sad.
Picking up third-tier characters, whoever gave the green light on the Batman animated series figures to have a Roxy Rocket figure, awesome.
That was also Paul Dini pushing us to do that, which is great. You guys have anybody you could do?
Okay, so quickly, because I want to give time, I give long answers. For me, it was the Reaper. He kicked around for a long time before we were able to get him. He's actually coming out.
Fine.
Yeah, but the Reaper was a
Scared me for a second. I was like, what? You announced him!
But that would be the case.
Do you have any, Jay?
No.
You make whatever you want.
Pretty much.
Let me just grab some from this side of the review, sir.
Yeah, I'm wondering what factors go into when you negotiate like a retailer-specific deal, where that figure is only going to be available at that one particular retail store.
For us, the buyers are very well educated in many cases, and they ask. They have specific things that they would like to own as a retailer. The trick then becomes making sure that everyone gets something good, and it doesn't all go to one place.
Yeah, but a lot of times too, a retailer will have an opinion. I like this artist, I want this thing, or this character, or we're going to base our whole year around this character, so can we get something exclusive about it? And you come up with creative ideas sometimes.
You started the Batman shirt. Last question before they boot us out of here.
I came in a little late, but did you already touch upon the production process being diminished from 3D printing? Is it helped quite a bit? Is it nominal? And did you already talk about that?
3D printing has revolutionized the industry.
Do you guys have your
Sorry, I work for General Giant now, so.
Sure. Do you have your own in-house printer?
We actually do. I gotta say, our pride, our badge of honor is the fact that out of all of Warner Brothers, we were the first group, our 15-person group, to have a 3D printer in-house. And then since other people have gotten it, but we had it for the lot back.
We, as small as we are, we have two, and if I had more room, I'd buy another one.
They're awesome.
They work all night.
Yep.
Good little work.
It's like work. And just having a sculpture, like we will go back every once in a while because we do limited edition sculptures. So having something like 12 inches and then being able to output a new one at 7 inches or 6 inches without having to go back and resculpt it all and make sure it still looks like what it looked like is magical.
Would you touch on like how much time it saves you as far as decreasing the process for production?
It could be a month of just resculpting.
Yeah, we will print, I mean, our statues go up to 40 inches tall. We'll print, 10-inch versions of everything ahead of time just to see, is that working? Because ZBrush sculpted in 2.5D, it never looks exactly what you think it's going to look like once you print it. You're like, oh, yeah, the software, it's not where people think it is.
No,
I mean, it's great, look, but it's not as advanced as, the media feeds you a little too much hype when it comes to it.
It's not all Star Trek yet.
Yeah, because they constantly, we do say, oh, that head's too small. Go back to ZBrush. No, it looks good to me. No, it's too small. And, so it has everything has its problems. But it's
a time saver.
It's a time saver.
Yeah, and being able to see something in the round, particularly for a statue, an action figure is one thing. A statue where it's posed and it's got to be from every angle, you have to see something.
The perspective in the software is not right yet. They still have to work on that.
Yeah. So it is great having our own printer that prints out something to see it is great.
And when we're trying to convince people of an idea, sell an idea, we have to have something physical on it. We do a lot of breadboards, which is great for functional features, but when it's for something that only has the aesthetic to go by, 3D printing is the way to go.
Sometimes you do really have to lead people by the hand and they have to hold it and touch it to buy into it.
And General Giant has helped us out recently on some things where we
That
can
is
get to
true.
prove a point.
That is true. But yeah, just, for me, just yesterday, so I started working in General Giant in January, and we were working on our Premier Guild gifts and things. So, I sat in this meeting and raised my hand and go, what if we do, this guy? And just yesterday, like the Old Man Logan bust, they printed it up, and the Obi-Wan. So it's like, that was the first time of me being able to go, let's do that thing, and then there it is. And like, that's really darn cool.
It makes it easier for everyone to work across.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You get exactly what that crazy guy down at the other end of the table is thinking about, because he can put it on the table and say, what do you think?
There it is, yeah.
But I am going to be the old cynical sculptor guy. There's still, in my opinion, there's a little loss of life in everything 3D sculpted versus clay sculpture. I could always tell.
It's really hard to get sort of movement and gesture into it, just sort of the action of something. You have to have a very talented sculptor.
But there's always trade-offs. I remember back in the day trying to, key all these texture and key everything.
Yeah. Every time Aquaman's little scaled shirt comes up, people are like, no, that's out.
Yeah. So it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. And if 3D wasn't worth it, we wouldn't all be doing it.
Yep.
But life is very important. Not mirroring wrinkles, keeping wrinkles asymmetrical, adding flow to capes, adding slight smirks, slight furrows, and narrowing of the eye, asymmetrical expression. It's key, because otherwise it looks dead. If you see scan data, it tends to look really dead. Like, I don't recognize the person because they're not animated. Rowdy Piper is a good one. If you look at scan data, it doesn't have any of the personality coming through. It doesn't look like it. It's spot on.
All right, they're telling us we have to stop, so thank you very much.